Good morning, dear friends, dear colleagues, distinguished guests to the Energy Transition Conference 2025. So welcome to all of you here in Trondheim and to everyone watching digitally. My name is Rethink and I will be the moderator of this conference and try to guide us through the conference program, which is designed to enlighten, inspire and provoke us. And most importantly, we are going to discuss how we can continue our transition away from carbon-intensive energy systems despite the troubled times that we are experiencing now. Now, so to get the first insight, I would like to invite to the podium the ever omnipresent Mr. Energy Transition himself, professor at NTNU and also director of NTNU Energy and the NTNU Energy Transition Initiative, Asgeir Tomasgard. And he will be joined by his boss, well, if academics accept the notion of bosses and leaders, that is, Grande, the rector of NTNU, the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. So please come up, both of you, and now you can have your welcoming applause, Asgeir and Tor. Nice to see you both. Is the microphone okay, Tor? Yeah, I think so. Perfect. Now, since last year's conference, the global geopolitical scene has changed tremendously and fast. And I guess you didn't really foresee the scale and speed of these changes when you were starting working on this year's conference program. But hey, what a timing for this year's topic that we saw in the beginning, time to rethink and redesign. So first of all, Asgeir, what do you want to emphasize with that overarching topic?
I think what we saw when we started working with this year's conference was already the trends that, while for the last decades, international trade globalization has been instrumental in increasing welfare and lifting living standards in a lot of the emerging economies. In addition, it has provided efficiency in global value chains in terms of lower prices, lower inflations. So international global cooperation has also been very important for combating climate change. And then we started seeing those trends in terms of more focus on the local, more pressure on this international cooperation in some of the value chains, and we see that every day, several times per day, some cases now.
Yeah.
And the question we ask ourselves is, how will this affect our abilities to reduce emissions? How will it affect the welfare of the population in the world? And basically, that led us to the title on, is it time to rethink and redesign? And I think this happens as we speak.
Yeah, so rethink, redesign, maybe not revolutionize, though.
I think the main objective still needs to be reduce emissions so that we could meet some of the objectives that you can see on the agenda to the 2-degree target or 1.5-degree target. But we have to realize also that energy security has been lifted much higher up on the agenda.
It has. So, Tor, how is the academic world coping with this new world? I don't know if we're going to say new world order. It's probably new world disorder.
Norway, we all know, is a small country on a global scale, and it's also an open economy. So I think there is no other options than international collaboration. I think that's key, even though it's a bit more complicated these days.
Because we don't collaborate with everyone necessarily, do we?
At the same time, as we're talking about, one thing is that we have to collaborate, and for us in Europe, it's the European collaboration, of course, very important. Nordic's perspective become even more important, but I think also we have to collaborate also with countries we don't have the same, let's say, security collaboration. And the typical example is, of course, China. I mean, China is leading country in many technological, especially in my field in material science. So there is no options not to collaborate. But of course, we have to collaborate with a different perspective than we did maybe 10 years ago, when science still was let's say, more open than it is today. At the same time, I think it's also important to address the threat of academic freedom these days, maybe in countries we didn't expect just a few months ago.
How worried are the both of you when it comes to our ability to reaching, well, one thing is the 1.5, but also the 2-degree climate target? I mean, Is the progress of the energy transition at risk?
So if you look at, well, there are many examples, but if you look, for example, at the UNEP gap report and its indications, we see that if you look at current policies, the reference emissions don't go down, or at least not sufficiently. So we are not in a position where we are going to meet the 2-degree target and 1.5-degree target without increased action. And this is serious because I think this will affect the lives of many, many people. And my hope is that even if we see these trends that have less international cooperation, that this will still continue in reducing climate emissions, and that we will be able to keep these global coalitions that cooperate on reducing emissions. And there is an urgency.
Tor, I guess you agree with Asgeir on this.
Yes, I'm really concerned actually, because I'm worried. The attention now is, of course, on national security and defense, and that's necessary and a consequence of the geopolitical situation. But still, in the long run, the big challenges we have heading in the a longer time scale is actually the climate and nature crisis. So, and of course also the just transition, if you think in a global context. And last year at this conference I also was a bit worried about the battle of the talents, meaning that when you're shifting scope, I think it's still important to address that, especially the young generation would like to, for example, study STEM, and that we have to look at the recruitment for the young generation also to be concerned with these problems.
STEM is?
It's science, technology, mathematics, and so on.
Yeah, I'm not from the natural sciences, yes, as you can understand. But talking about the young talents, you actually have a new feature on the program this year, which is the Experts in Teamwork, the Mission Net Zero. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that, Tor?
Yes, Expert in Teams is a kind of a signal course at NTNU, going back to when we were created at the Norwegian Parliament, where we had a mission to think interdisciplinary research. So this Expert in Team concept is that you actually bring students together from different disciplines, working on let's say, problems you need input from several different disciplines. So this year there has been, I think it's around 300 students, 13 teams working on net zero solutions. And outside in the expedition area, you will see they have posters. And as far as I understand, the Minister of Energy in Norway will actually give a prize to the best poster, if I'm been informed correctly.
Yes, I think you have, and that's a surprise for later on this afternoon, that we're going to reveal who will win among these 13. So there's a jury walking around, and everyone else here, of course, can watch the posters as well. Are there any highlights that you would like to point out from the program, Asgeir? Of course, this is you made the program together with...
It's only highlights. You are
of course, yes.
So it's, I think we will, just after us now, we will go into continue this discussion on the urgency and the global stocktake and have more insights into, well, there are many questions. Are we ambitious enough? But I think the more serious question is, are we able to follow up the ambition with action? And I'm looking forward to see that. Then we move into more geopolitics, first with Dr. Fatih Birol, that will present or discuss with you his views on these aspects, before we go into a full session on energy security and secure value chains. Next up, access to capital and the role of capital in how we can actually speed up the transition, and then end the day, hopefully on a positive note, with solutions.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds great. So I think we should probably just dive into the program soon, shouldn't we? So thank you so much. And to NTNU Rector Tor Grande, and Professor and Director at NTNU as well, Asgeir Tomasgard.
Thank you.
Huge applause to you.